Hey guys, welcome back to my next book preview video. This week I am really excited. I finally got my hands on some Rockhe Kims Anatomy drawing class books. Not just one, but three, including the Rockhe Kims line drawing technique books as well. So first of all, let's get started with the Rockhe Kims Anatomy drawing class book. This is the largest one out of the three. It is 400 pages in length and it's quite a big book as well. So a quick look at the front and back of the cover there. Let's get straight into this one. You can see it's a very wide book, so I've had to take my camera quite far out. We've got a little bit of an introduction about the author, which we'll talk about in a second. But first of all, I think a good place to start is, of course, with the contents. As I say in a lot of these videos, feel free to pause the video here and take a proper look through this section so that you can spend a little bit more time than I have in this video. But just briefly, we've got figure shaping, the face, anatomy drawing, understanding anatomy through motion, and using the basics for character concepts. First thing I want to mention is this book has come up on quite a few occasions for me when I'm looking on certain rare book websites here in the UK, but it's always been the Korean version. So I was always really tempted by it. It's been on the top of my list for a while, but they've just released all three of these books. We'll see the other two in a second, in English, amongst some other languages as well. I think that they've released it in French as well. It's worth noting there may be some mild nudity throughout the book because there is sections on how to draw the breasts and obviously how to draw nude females because it is an anatomy book. I also really like in these books these illustrations throughout. I would love a full art book just of this sort of rendering style, this blue line art that I really like. But again, we'll talk about the line art section more when we move on to the next two books, which focus on line art. So whilst this book has come up a lot for me online, I wasn't initially familiar with the artist, but I think he's quite well known in Korea. He's quite a renowned Korean artist. He has a really big YouTube channel as well, which I will put links to below. So it's definitely worth checking out some of his streams where he does a lot of, obviously, anatomy videos. Aside from that though, he's worked for some pretty big companies as well. I believe he works for Marvel, and that includes like comic book work as well as animations. There is a brief description at the beginning. I think he's also done concept art for certain video games as well. So quite a portfolio. This kind of thing, the description of the muscles, reminds me a little bit of the Stonehouse anatomy books, for those of you that are familiar with that. So obviously this book is an anatomy book, so we know what it's about, but it has quite a large focus on anatomy in motion. So what I mean by that is there's a lot of older anatomy books that show maybe a stationary body, someone just standing there and it might label each muscle. But where it gets really tricky is when you move body parts. Obviously muscles stretch, they contract, they overlap, they fold or skin folds. So there's various things like that becomes quite complicated. It's not just the anatomical knowledge, but it's the movement involved. And despite this covering quite a lot of information, well, a load of information, 400 pages worth throughout the book, it is actually described as being for beginners. One of the big selling points is it's such a comprehensive anatomy book that it's almost known as its own curriculum. So in the descriptions, for example, it mentions that these are really good for people that are studying and teaching themselves at home. So pretty ideal for most of us artists. And then just very briefly before we move on to these next books, because this video is getting very long already, but I wanted to show you the character concepts section just because I honestly thought the illustrations and the drawings in this bit were so cool that I just wanted to make sure I'd shown a page or two of it. Really love this rendering style. But anyway, guys, let's leave it at that for book one. So next up we have the Rockhe Kims Line Drawing Techniques Volume 1 and 2. But just before we look inside the book, I wanted to show you this on the back because I think it's really cool. There you go. Pretty cool reason to get both of them. I think that's awesome. So getting straight into these and having a bit of a look through them. The first thing to note is these are a little bit smaller in size. So I have zoomed my camera in just a little bit. And the page count on this first one is about 300. But first of all, the contents, we've got section 1, shaping, upper body forms and movement, lower body foundation, the face, upper body posture, arms, legs, and women's breast and form. These two line drawing books I don't think have quite as much text in them when compared to the previous anatomy book. I'm quite a visual learner, and if a book is too text heavy, I tend to zone out a little bit and I just lose interest, and I just find it difficult to take in the information. Whereas these ones have a lot more reference to learn from. I think you can tell already, a lot more image-based pages, Yeah, so I'm quite a big fan of that. And I initially wasn't familiar with these two line drawing books. I wasn't sure what they were really about compared to the anatomy one was more self-explanatory. A description at the beginning though does describe it as almost like if you've ever drawn anatomy, maybe a sketch, and it looks decent, maybe you feel good about it, and then you've gone over it with line art, maybe what we would probably refer to as the inking stage, and sort of a lot of mistakes start to show up and suddenly you don't feel so good about it. Which definitely stands out to me. I'm definitely familiar with that. So it's kind of a way to improve that and show anatomy through line drawings. So I guess it's a little bit stylized in that respect. The official description of the book explains it as basically understanding form and anatomy through the use of silhouette and line art. Again, you're going to see these really cool illustrations throughout. I'd love to see a book just full of these illustrations, to be honest. These ones focus very heavily, again, as you can see, on the use of 3D shapes, which is, of course, really, really important to understand how to draw anything in space without it looking too flat. And it's also how you would learn to draw things from imagination as well. So it's very important. So let's go through a few more pages of this book. Let's look at the arms section. But I spent so much time on that initial anatomy book, which is a little bit bigger, that this video is probably already quite long. So I'm thinking we should skip to the line drawing section part 2. So here it is, a quick look at the front and back there again. Really nice cover on this. I love this design. We're going to get straight into this one and take a look at the contents. This one doesn't have as many sections to it, but there's still a decent amount for each section. So we've got the hands, the feet, wrinkles in clothing, and various poses of figure shaping. So you might notice the book earlier did already cover hands, but I think this goes into a little bit more detail. And as I mentioned in that last book, I believe that this one's more handy for like reference, no pun intended. So again, it's not too text heavy, and you can see how this structure translates into a line drawing, or what I'd probably call an ink drawing. And it really is quite a lot of reference when you actually go through it page by page, and it's very clear, the line art. It's very clean, I guess you'd say, so easy to read, easy to understand. And the section that we'll see about drapery in a second is the bit that reminded me a little bit of a Morpho book. Maybe it's the layout, or maybe it's just because I have the Morpho drapery book. But I've always found that drapery is something I want to understand, something I want to study, and I don't think there's an awful lot of material out there for it, especially in book form. So I'm pretty intrigued about that. So here we go, wrinkles in clothing. I read a bit at the beginning off camera where he talks about drawing these without reference. So I always think it's really good to be able to aim for something like that. I guess that's every artist's goal, to be able to draw things like this from imagination eventually. So if this book can help with that, then that is definitely something worthwhile studying. But until then, this will act as a good reference as well. So I will put all the links to these books in the description box below the video if you guys want to get your hands on them. So the website I actually ordered these from in Korea, they sent this out on Wednesday, and I've got this already on Friday. I mean, that is probably the fastest shipping for that kind of distance that I have ever seen, because I'm in the UK. If you want to contact the artist with any questions, I'll put links to his YouTube channel below as well. Check out some of his videos. I am really excited to go through and study these books when I get time, but man, this is going to be a long-term project because there's a lot of information here. So again, this book's 250 pages. That last one I showed was 300. And the first anatomy book is 400 pages almost, and it's a little bit bigger as well. So I'm going to leave it at that. I hope you guys found the video useful. If you were interested in buying these books, let me know what you think to them in the comments below. And of course, as always, make sure you subscribe for more content. Thanks for watching, everyone.